Okay. So the first thing that I want to ask is, can you please raise your hand or put an emoji into the chat? You can raise your hand by clicking on the little raise hand emoji. Wait, don't raise your hands yet. Raise your hand if you have been to one of our previous classes on tarot. Or put an emoji in the chat or say yes in the chat. Let me know somehow that you have been to a previous tarot class. Cool. Awesome. Okay. So it looks like we have about 6 or 7 people that have been to a previous tarot class, or a couple previous tarot classes, and about 43 people who this is their first class. Oh, but you have been to a previous class, just not my tarot classes. Okay, cool, cool, awesome. Sweet. Okay. All right. So I know that a lot of the students that are here from the Academy who have taken previous classes, they do need this class for their certification. So we are still going to continue with Major Arcana, don't worry. I know sometimes if we have like 40 people where they're brand new to tarot, I won't do Major Arcana. I'll back up a little bit and we'll start from scratch and from the beginning. I'm not going to do that tonight. I know a few of you are here because you need this class on your certification. All right. So we are going to do both. Since I know that there's a lot of people here that this is their first time, we are going to cover all the major arcana stuff that people need for their certification. And we are also going to go over some review as well to help everybody keep up and make sure you're not completely lost. So before we dive in, I just want to explain the history of tarot a little bit, because it does get very jumbled. I have noticed that when you Google the history of tarot, number one, you get a different answer depending on which website you go to, which is always so fun. And almost all of them, just, for lack of better words, are wrong, which is always so frustrating. And I'm not saying that obviously I'm right, and they're wrong. I think that there's just a lot more nuance to the history than people understand. And when you've been studying it for a very long time, you start to realize how much more to it there is than the things that you will find on Google. So I am going to give you a little history lesson on tarot really quick. So cartomancy. Cartomancy is the process of using cards for divination work. Divination work is basically, divination work is using an object to give someone guidance about their personality, their past, their present, their future, their love life, their anything that they're going through. Using an object to give someone guidance on something going on in their past, their present, or their future. And there are many, many different ways to do that. It can even be using an object or an element, or using matter of some sort to give yourself or others guidance on their past, present, or future. These things can include runes reading, tarot reading, scrying, palm reading, cartomancy, crystal ball reading, crystal reading, all kinds of things. So cartomancy, the process of using cards to give someone guidance, started in the Middle East, specifically areas around Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and what you would call the minor arcana in tarot and the court cards in tarot were what they used in cartomancy. Cartomancy used a traditional 52 card deck, or, you know, it was really 50 cards because they didn't really have the idea of jokers or anything. But you used a very traditional playing card deck in order to create poetry, in order to tell someone's future, in order to talk about and be able to read someone's personality, in order to be able to read their past, to be able to read what's going on in their present and help give them guidance.
They're not that good.
And so that all started in the Middle East. Then, and in the specific countries that we talked about. Then they started to design the cards that in a way that was more based off of using them for divination and mysticism. So the cards started to take on a look that looked much more like tarot cards. And the suits of the cards started to take on imagery that looked much closer to what we know today in tarot, such as having the cups, the swords, the coins, and the staves. Sorry. So I'm going to show you a picture of what they looked like historically and in the Middle East. So pay no attention to my gigantic Google Drive. Hold on. Oh. It might take too long to find. I might be kidding. I might not show you. Arabic cartomancy. I thought it was in this drive. Maybe I didn't put it in this drive. Anyway, sorry. I'll put that on the website. We will show it, but not right now. So they started to have images that had chalices and pentacles or coins and staves and swords on the cards. And so they started to use the exact same spiritual meanings for those symbols within their card readings, such as in ancient Arabic cartomancy, chalices represented water, and pentacles represented earth, and swords represented air, and staves represented fire. And that is the exact way that we read tarot. For those of you who didn't know, that is the exact representation of all of those symbols. And they started to come up with all of the meanings behind those symbols based on Arabic mysticism and based on Arabian mythology. And so then during trade and during war, Italy enjoyed playing this cartomancy game. It was very much a game in ancient Arabia. It was a game used to read your future and a game used to read your past and your personality and your history and everything about you. And people from Italy would obviously traded a lot with ancient Arabia. It was one of the very first trade routes established, one of the largest trade routes as well, other than, of course, the Silk Road in India. And so it, Italy loved this game, and it was an open practice. It was something that ancient Arabia loved to share with everybody. They would share it at feasts and at celebrations and during war to, help people feel better and help give them guidance and help them with everything that they were going through during war. And so people loved to share this beautiful idea of Arabic cartomancy. And when Italy started to enjoy this, they brought it home. And when they brought it home, they started to add cards to it, which we know today as the major arcana. So the minor arcana and the court cards originated in ancient Arabia. The major arcana got added to the deck, and the decks started to get called tarot cards in Italy. They were already naming it Arabic words that sounded very, very similar to the word tarot, but the real, the name tarot cards really started to become popular in Italy rather than using a bunch of different Arabic words and the name cartomancy. And there are many, many, many different ways to say it depending on which country you lived in throughout the Middle East and throughout ancient Arabia. It really coined and got truly called tarot cards when it came to Italy. And then the major arcana cards got added, the deck became bigger, and it spread like wildfire throughout all of Europe and made its way throughout the entire world. But when you Google it, it is really disappointing to me that it just says tarot began in Italy. Because as I just described to you, that's not the full story, and that's not fair. Most of the deck was created in ancient Arabia. That's why it's been passed down in my family for generations. I'm Middle Eastern and from Syria and Lebanon, and that is why tarot has been passed down in my family for generations, is because that's where it started. And I think that people should know that the minor arcana came from ancient Arabia. It also makes sense when you think about the numbers that we use. We do not tend to use for the minor arcana, for the 2 of cups and the 3 of cups and the 2 of pentacles and the 2 of swords. We don't use Roman numerals. We use Arabic numerals. And so it should be very obvious where, these stemmed from and where they came from, because tarot cards have been used for over 2,000 years. And I think it's very important to know the history before you start reading with them, to know where they came from, to know their beautiful history, and before you start connecting with your cards and using them to read other people's future and your own past and everything that you can do with a beautiful, incredible deck of tarot cards. It has a wonderful history from ancient Arabia and from Italy. So, so the minor arcana were created in ancient Arabia, and the court cards. So the the Ace of Pentacles, the 2 of Pentacles, the 3 of Pentacles, the 4 of Pentacles, and so on for each suit, as well as the King, Queen, and Knight. They were called different things. The traditional deck of playing cards did not start off being called King and Queen and Knight and Page, but essentially they were the court cards. They just went by different names depending on what type of monarchy you had in that country, what type of system of government you had, and what type of structure of economy that you had, all had an influence on the playing card decks that were around at the time, which I think is also very interesting. If you lived in a country that was ruled by a king, then your typical deck of playing cards probably had a king in it. If you did not live in a country that was ruled by a king and it was ruled by something else, a lot of times the traditional 52 card playing deck would have something different in it. Also, if you lived in the Middle East, they found it to be extremely disrespectful to put the face, like to put someone's face on something, or to take pictures or draw pictures of people's faces, because it took a piece of your soul. So you wouldn't see a face card. You know how we call them face cards? That wouldn't have existed. It would have just had words. So it would have been called, the King of Pentacles, but it would just have been written out in words. You would have not seen a face drawn on that card, because that would have been against a lot of the ancient pagan spiritualities throughout the Middle East back then. Remember, we are talking about long before Islam. We are talking about long before these religions came to be. And so it would have been largely pagan in ancient Arabia. Yes, so does anybody have any questions about the history of tarot cards? I'm going to put pictures of them. I really wish I could have found them on my Google Drive, but I didn't want to take the whole class trying to find pictures of them, because it's actually really cool to see. To see the pictures. No, that's just my bio for the Denver Tarot meetup. I did this big thing at the Denver Tarot meetup where I talked about the history of tarot, and I had these really cool pictures of tarot cards from ancient Arabia. But no. Yeah, we're not gonna. Okay. Anyway, they were very cool though. I'll put them on the website. So let's get started. So if nobody has any questions about the history of tarot and where it began, I do teach classes much more extensively on ancient Arabia and the beautiful pagan spiritualities that existed there. That is for a different class, and how they relate to tarot. So we are going to look at major arcana. And now you know the history of major arcana. So this is a form of divination that started in Italy after cartomancy moved to Europe. And one of the ways that you can tell that it originated in Europe is that they read extremely differently than the minor arcana. For those of you who understand the minor arcana, the way that you read the minor arcana is by taking the Arabic numerology and the symbolism of the Arabic numerology. So let's say number 5, and you pair it with the symbology of the suit. So 5 in Arabic numerology, its keyword is chaos. It means a lot more than that, but just a keyword for 5 in Arabic numerology, its symbology would be chaos. You pair that with whatever symbol is there. So let's say it is the 5 of swords. Swords represent the mind. They represent the intellectual growth of someone. They represent wisdom and analytical knowledge. And so you would pair the number 5 with wisdom and analytical knowledge. So 5 being the representation of chaos, and swords being analytical thought and wisdom. You would squish those two things together, and that would give you a good understanding of the 5 of swords. Instead, you read major arcana completely different. If you didn't already know that about minor arcana, it's fine. We teach that in our other classes. Go back and watch the YouTube videos on the minor arcana. Today is the major arcana. So the major arcana are read completely different. Instead, you use tropical astrology. Tropical astrology is a form of astrology that originates in North Africa and Greece. And it is probably the most commonly used astrology throughout the Western world. This is the astrology that probably all of you are familiar with. These are the astrological signs, Aries and Taurus and Gemini and Cancer and Leo. That is the type of astrology that is used to read major arcana. So astrology is the study of the movement and relative positions of celestial objects. Astrology has been dated to at least the 2nd millennium BCE, and remember we are talking about tropical astrology specifically, and has its roots in calendrical systems used to predict seasonal shifts and to interpret celestial cycles as signs of divine communications. Many cultures have attached importance to astronomical events, and some, such as the Hindus, Chinese, and the Mayan, developed elaborate systems for predicting terrestrial events from celestial observations. So, as I mentioned, in the Hindu culture and a lot of ancient Chinese cultures and Mayan cultures, they are going to use a completely different form of astrology. This is not the same astrology that they would use. So remember, when you talk about astrology and when we focus on astrology, the reason that we are focusing on this form of astrology when it comes to the major arcana cards, it is because the major arcana cards were developed and created in Europe. Therefore, you would use a form of astrology that Europeans would have been using at the time that major arcana cards were developed and created. But if you are going to do a form of divination work that is from ancient Latin America, or you are going to use a form of divination work that is from ancient Africa, or different, a different part of the world entirely, and it surrounds astrology, remember not to use tropical astrology. I see a lot of people who are trying to use different forms of, let's see, I'm trying to think of one that would be, there's different forms of crystal reading. Different forms of crystal reading that originate in the Inca culture, in the Incan culture, in the Mayan culture. If you are practicing that form of crystal reading, number one, make sure it's not a closed practice. But number two, you would not use astrology based off of Aries and Taurus and Leo and Sagittarius, because they don't have that. And that would not be the correct form of astrology to use. Once again, if you are going to practice a divination that's from China or from Japan, you would not use tropical astrology because they have their own astrology, and you should use that instead. So anyway, the major arcana and astrology. The major arcana cards are defined and interpreted based on their astrological association, element, and symbology. To truly understand the major arcana, you must understand their astrology. Their astrological association will help you to understand their elements. So for example, if you have a card such as the card Strength, the major arcana card Strength, that is represented by Leo. And if you look at the little cheat sheet that I have for you guys here, Leo is underneath fire. So Leo is represented by fire, which means that the Strength tarot card is going to be a fire card. And therefore it is going to mean its definition, like the definition of the card and the meaning behind the card are going to be related to fire. And they are also going to be related to Leo. I promise this will make more sense as we go on. So every single astrological sign is ruled by a planet. So as we used the example of the Strength tarot card, the Strength tarot card is represented by Leo. It is represented by fire, and it is also represented by the sun. So if you understand tropical astrology, if you already know what Leo means, then you already know the definition of the Strength tarot card, at least part of it. If you already know what the sun represents in tropical astrology, then you already know part of what the Strength card represents. And if you already know what fire represents when we are talking about elemental symbolism, then you already know. You take those three things and you put them together, and that equals most of the definition of the Strength card. And that is how you read the major arcana. The minor arcana are much simpler. If you take my minor arcana classes, that's why I do those first. It doesn't sound so complicated, and it's actually very easy, and we get through the cards really, really, really fast. And by the end of my minor arcana classes, you're already a tarot reader. These ones are much more complex. It takes a minute. It's hard to explain. So you will notice that some major arcana cards represent a planet and a zodiac sign. A major arcana card can represent both a planet and a zodiac symbol. It can also represent multiple zodiac signs or multiple planets, as well as the sun or the moon, just like we talked about with Strength. To completely understand the card, you must understand its basic symbology, so what the card means all by itself without being affected by astrology. You also must understand its multiple astrological associations, so such as the sun and Leo. For example, the Magician symbolizes Mercury and Gemini, which means that it is represented by heavy air signs, but also as the Magician, it represents all of the elements. The Fool represents Aquarius, Uranus, and Aries, which means that astrologically it is represented by both fire and air, as well as the interpretations that can go along with the symbology of the Fool. So let's slow down and do every card one by one. Since we have already spent about 4 of my classes discussing and talking about the Fool, we are not going to start with the Fool today. The people who have taken my classes have probably heard about the Fool 7,000 times. So if you would like to go back and read about it, please feel free. It is on the website. But we are actually going, I want to leave this cheat sheet up for you right here. So let's see if I can. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. And then, yeah, there we go. Cool. So instead, now would be the time to get out your tarot deck if you have it. So let's see. Trying to figure out where we stopped last time. Okay. So let's see. Let's start with the world. Let's just go from the bottom up so that we know that we covered every card in the YouTube videos and that you can go back and watch a video of every single card. So the world is represented by the planet Saturn. So if you go here and you open up your little cheat sheet, we can look at Saturn, and that is represented by Capricorn. So let's talk about the definition of the world and what it would mean in a tarot spread. So number one, can anybody give us a little overview of Capricorn? If anybody knows their astrology and wants to tell us about Capricorn, I always love hearing, because astrology is something that a lot of people know about, especially when you're first getting into witchcraft. So if somebody would like to, or they would like to say it in the chat, if you don't feel comfortable, I would love to hear your thoughts on Capricorn. Yeah, I can definitely make it bigger. Now that we already know which tarot card we're picking, I can definitely make it bigger. Here you go. There you go. So we are focusing right now on Capricorn and the tarot card, the world, and the planet Saturn. Awesome, the sea goat. I love it. Yes, very grounded. Totally a very grounded earth sign. It is Capricorn season now, so I actually think that's really interesting that we chose to pick that card. Yep, very ambitious, planning, analytical. I love it. Oh, cool. So your mom's a Capricorn. Awesome. Yeah, so if you go to the other cheat sheet, just in case people didn't know, and you can go over here and look. So Capricorn falls under Earth. I made this slideshow too, just so that people can have a really nice, easy way to visualize all of the astrology signs. Just in case you didn't know, Capricorn is represented by Earth. Awesome, you're a Capricorn, super cool. Oh, I just have it memorized, Shannon. So that's actually a really good question, and I want to bring up. So Shannon asked something awesome. So because tarot cards have moved from the Middle East to Europe, to North America, to South America, and to all over the world, you are going to find slightly different information depending on where and who you get that information from. I learned to read tarot cards generationally from my family, and also I've had about 11 different mentors, including Rena Shesso, who is a very famous tarot novelist and writer, and she's amazing. Probably a lot of the books, if you guys have ever read pagan books, she's probably written a lot of them. And I've had a bunch of different mentors from all over the world, and I've read a whole bunch of books. So I just have these memorized. But if you go and you find a different book and you're like, Alex, the world is represented by Mars and Aries, and if you can tell me why, and we can have a really great conversation about why, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer, as long as you have, like, historical evidence and good evidence to back up the fact why the tarot card the world represents Mars and Aries. I am down to have that conversation, and I'm never going to tell you that you're wrong. So yeah, to answer your question. I hope that helps. Yeah, of course. Rena Shesso. Yeah, no problem. RENNASHESSO. Rena Shesso. She's amazing. She's also a professor here at this academy. She runs our rituals. She is so fantastic. Ooh, Chelsea, I love your definition. Yes. Of course, Shannon. No problem. Okay, cool. So, yes, I loved all of your definitions of a Capricorn. Yeah, so it is Saturn and Capricorn. And we're going to go into what that means and the definition of the world. So a lot of you, if you don't have the world in your tarot deck, another name for it is the universe. Yeah, but yeah. I don't know of any other names for it. I've only seen like the world, the universe, and then of course, if you have a themed tarot deck, they're probably going to call it something completely different. But so Capricorn is a representation of Earth. They are extremely grounded. They tend to be very focused on things that exist tangibly on Earth. So a lot of people call that materialistic. A lot of people call that obsessed with money or very, very proud of the material things that they own. But really, Earth is just a symbol that is represented by the tangible things that exist on this planet and that exist all around us. Our house, our family, our car, our school, our books, our clothes, all of those things. And Capricorn find those things to be not only very important, but also that is kind of how they define their worth sometimes, is by those things that exist tangibly in their life. So their worth is based off of the way that their family sees them, the things that they've been able to buy, how they've been able to provide for others, what others have been able to provide for them. Sometimes Capricorn are kind of stereotypically known as those people who their love language is gift giving. And they also are people who really see the big picture when it comes to the real world. So they don't learn in a metaphorical way. They learn in a down-to-earth, hands-on way. They aren't going to they aren't going to love usually talking about big, giant philosophical topics. They really understand things in a more hands-on and visual way. And that translates into the world card. So the world card is definitely a card that is based in Earth. And it is talking about not only your self-worth, but the world that exists around you and how your world feels. And when we talk about that, when the world card is right side up, it represents your material world, the tangible things that exist around you, your home, your family, your food, your books, your life, your tangible life, and being able to see the big picture on how it's going. And if that card is right side up, you probably need to look at the big picture a little bit more and look at how incredibly successful your tangible world is, because you're probably too wrapped up in your metaphorical world. You're probably too wrapped up in a lot of your emotions and your love life and your relationships with other people and your relationships with people at work and the all of the beautiful things that go on in our anxiety and our depression and our worries and fears and all of those things. We don't remember to look at the tangible world. What is literally going on? Do you have food? Do you have a house or a place where you, with a roof over your head? Do you have people who exist in your life? Do you have tangible things that exist all around you? And how is that going? And sometimes we forget to look at the actual tangible world around us, not just the metaphorical emotions and thoughts running through our minds. And that is what the world reminds us of. It is our Capricorn and our Saturn, which both represent the tangible earthly things that we look at every single day and sometimes take for granted because we look at them every day. Our bed, our everything, every single thing, our dog, our even the fact that you have to do the laundry and you have to do the dishes and all of those things, but you have laundry and you have dishes, and that is what the world card represents. It's your world, your tangible world. It's not necessarily how blessed you are. Yes, totally, but it's more than that. It's not saying, oh, right side up, you're so blessed, upside down, you're just not blessed. It's more of right side up, you need to step back and look at the tangible world because you're not spending enough time looking at the tangible world. You're too caught up in the metaphorical world and the metaphysical world and your emotions and worries and anxieties and thoughts. If upside down, it's that you spend way too much time in the real physical world, and that all you tend to care about is money and gifts and how clean your house is and whether or not, all the very tangible things going on in life, that you forget to look at the metaphysical world and the metaphorical world. Does that make sense? So right side up, you need to look at the real tangible world. Upside down, you spend too much time focused on the real tangible world and not enough time focused on your mental health and your emotions and how your emotions affect the emotions of those around you. Yes. And especially for, those of you who are Capricorns in general, remember that being hyper focused on the real world and making sure that everything is perfect, take a step back and look at your mental health and the metaphorical things going on, your mental health, your emotions. Are you happy? And your relationships and all of those things. Does anybody have any questions about that? The world card was a very funny card to start off with. That is it's a big one. It's a hard one to kind of wrap your head around. So does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? And then how it relates to Capricorn and how it relates to Saturn.
My voice is going out, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So with the world card being the last card of the major arcana, and we started with the Fool on the journey, I also feel that the world card upright, if you look at some of them, they have a lot of elements. It's It's round, it's a wreath, it's representing like also to a completion of a cycle. I feel that it can represent that as well, depending on what the layout of the card and the questions that you're asking.
Yes, I love that you brought that up. Totally. I completely forgot to mention that. I mentioned that in all my other classes, and I forgot to mention that because we didn't talk about the Fool. So thank you. Yes. So if you'll notice, and something that Kari already brought up, and I love it, or I know I always do that. Carrie, I am so sorry. Anyway, something that Carrie brought up that was so great is that, so it is in the major arcana. A lot of people believe that it is the Fool that is going on the journey of the major arcana cards. So if the Fool, because the representation of the Fool is somebody who is just starting off on their path, they're extremely passionate and excited, and they want to do 5 million things all at once, and they aren't really thinking about the risks. They just want to dive in and do absolutely everything all the time, and they have these huge giant ambitions. Anyway, people think that the Fool is going through the journey of the major arcana cards and ends with the World. So, oh, and don't apologize about your voice, Carrie. I totally understand. My voice goes out all the time. So, if it ends with the World, number one, it creates a beautiful cycle, because as we know, the year, the wheel of the year in Celtic mythology and in a lot of European mythology, the wheel of the year ends with Capricorn. So how beautiful and how symbolic that the journey of the Fool ends at the exact same astrological sign as the wheel of the year. Like, that's so beautiful. And also that it ends with this idea of being grounded, and this idea of not only being grounded, but a beautiful symbol for the world as well is that the journey never really ends. Now you just sit down, as the World symbolizes, and you contemplate everything that you have, all of the beautiful things that you obtained. You look at the big picture and you start again. Just like all of the beautiful symbology in European mythology about the wheel of the year and cycles and starting over. So that really is so awesome. Thank you for bringing that up, Carrie, that it um, ends on the same astrological sign as the actual wheel of the year ends. And also, it's beautiful symbolism and ending with the World, because all it really means is that you sit down for a time of contemplation and then you start again. Yes. So yeah, I'm looking through the chat to see if there were any questions. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yes, I totally can, Sarah. Thank you for bringing that up. So, I'm going to look to see. Oh, and Natalie, we will have this class again sometime. Probably within the next couple weeks, but if you would like to go to the YouTube channel, we are just Divination Academy on YouTube, and you can see the recording of this entire class from start to finish, just in case you missed it. So, the planets. Now, usually I would go much deeper into the planets, but the World has this beautiful little synchronicity thing going on where Saturn basically means everything that I already talked about with Capricorn. I didn't want to just sit there and repeat myself. Saturn is a representation of the tangible things in the world. It is a representation of success and money. Well, not really money. It is a representation of wealth and prosperity, and that can mean many things. It does not have to mean money. Many people are very, very wealthy and do not have a whole bunch of green paper. that is whole different conversation. But it is, yes, exactly. It is encircled by a ring. Yes. It is a representation of, yeah, prosperity and wealth, but very much so tangible wealth and tangible prosperity. It's also a representation of family and friends and everything that Capricorn really embodies and symbolizes is very representative in Saturn. So I didn't really have to go into specific detail about Saturn because Capricorn kind of covered all of that. But yes, you really want to take the planet and the astrological sign and mush them together to get the real definition of the tarot card itself, as well as the symbology just in the tarot card itself, which is why we discussed and talked about the world itself and your little world and what that means. It'll become apparent in a lot more of the cards that we go through. The world is, it's a little bit different. Like when we talk about the high priestess, it's not going to be as basic and self-explanatory as the world, you know? So yes, but that is what Saturn represents. And if you want to go more into what Saturn represents and what Capricorn represents, we do have astrology classes that are only for that. This class, I speed through the astrology just a little bit because we're really focusing on the tarot card. But does all of that make sense? Does anybody have any other questions? Of course, no problem. Yes, so we do have the astrology classes. You can go to the YouTube and look at our astrology playlist. There's about 7 videos in there from our amazing professor, Micah. She's a way better astrologist than me. Like, I'm good, but she's a master. But we also have astrology classes that we do as well. We haven't had a couple in a couple months because Micah took a little bit of a break, but those should be back very soon. So anyway, moving on. So we're going to move on to judgment. So I want to see really quick if we have, nope. Okay, cool. I need to update the website. As you can see, some of them have the Astrological Association. Like some of them do not, as you can see at the bottom here. The ones I still have to fill in. Oh, look at that. I just have to fill in a couple. Anyway, so judgment is represented by Scorpio. Of course it is. Why would judgment not be represented by Scorpio? So could anybody tell me a little bit about Scorpio? Yes. Feisty. What a nice way of putting it. Suspicious. Very good. Yes. And by the way, I am totally joking when I make fun of the astrology signs. If you're a Scorpio, I absolutely love you. There are just, some astrological signs that are stereotypically fun to make fun of. Yes. Awesome. So let's see. Dramatic, for sure. Emotional, sexual, judgmental. Love it. Black and white. They are water signs, so they are emotionally driven. Yes. That's Stinger. Intensely loyal to their family and friends, for sure. Yes. Which is absolutely fantastic about Scorpio. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better, Demeter. You can watch the class on YouTube, and I can't wait to see you in future classes. Have a wonderful night. I'm glad you totally get it. Most Scorpios know. Most Scorpios know. They know. My granddaughter is a Scorpio, quick to jab. Yep. Very much her own, very, very much her own self. Yes. Oh, yes. And very emotional and loving. Awesome. Yes, we love to investigate and to know what's underneath. We have to know the truth and taboos. I love them. Yes. Sassy for sure. Yes. Okay, cool. All right, that's very interesting. Okay. So, I want to talk about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Maddie, because you mentioned yeah, you mentioned something that I really want to talk about. So, it's okay, where should I start with this? So, they're definitely
I'm
not
so sorry.
they're definitely not represented by, well, okay, when I say definitely, I have never seen them represented by Capricorn. But Virgo and Virgo and Libra, I have seen for judgment. Libra is probably the biggest one. So when I say Scorpio, we can definitely add Libra in there as well. And I think that's a wonderful thing to bring up. I happen to think that judgment is represented wonderfully by Scorpio. I stick to Scorpio and Pluto as well. But Libra is a huge one um for judgment and as well as justice. And I have seen judgment represented by Libra, and I would say that we can talk about Virgo as a representation for Libra. I mean, sorry, we can talk about Virgo as a representation for judgment, and we're going to talk about Libra as a representation, and we're going to talk about Scorpio, and we're going to talk about all three. And even on the website, I will put all three, and I will put why. It's not going to change the meaning of judgment at all. It's going to mean the same thing. We can't just, say, oh, it could mean blank or it could mean no. Judgment has one definition, at least in traditional tarot reading, and we are talking about the traditional strega way to read, which is the ancient pagans in Italy and what they defined each card as. But we can talk about how a different astrological sign can represent the exact same symbology within the card of judgment and why. And so we are going to address that. So thank you for bringing that up. Capricorn, I would not say Capricorn. But Virgo we will talk about. Bye, Jeremiah. Awesome. I love all of your yes. Yes. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have so many things to read. Okay. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Yes. So we are going to talk about that, Jackie. Yep. Libra for sure. So like Libra is the other one for sure. Like it's the it's the big one. Oh, you were saying bye to them. I thought you were just saying bye. And I was like, okay, bye. I'm glad you're not leaving. Nice. I am also a Sagittarius. I've had so many people tell me that they can tell instantly when I talk that I'm a Sagittarius. So, um, anyway, let's dive into judgment. So, the first one we are going to cover is Pluto and Scorpio. Then we will cover Libra and Venus and how those are also possibilities. And then we will jump into Virgo and Mercury and why those are possibilities. So first, let's cover the definition of judgment. So the definition of judgment is actually very self-explanatory. And I actually, for this one, I didn't do this with the last card because, okay, no offense to the World Tarot card. Love it. It's a fantastic card. But every single card that you see looks almost the same. It is a depiction of the planet Earth, the world. So, but for this one, I want to show off some pictures really quick, just in case you don't have a deck on you. If you have a deck on you, I would absolutely love if you pulled out your deck and looked at the judgment card. Yeah, we're going to look at which, I want to pick one that has a lot of symbology so I can kind of show you, yes, this one is good. Okay. So, let's put it here for a second. I loved all of your definitions of Scorpio, by the way. I did. It's awesome that all of you are so, I don't know. It's really cool to me sometimes how astrology is so well known. Is there a way that we can just pull this up here? No, just kidding. I didn't want to do that. Okay. All right. Can all of you guys see this picture? Is it pretty big for you? I am so sorry that you have two Scorpios sitting in front of you. Or do you have two judgment cards sitting in front of you? Two judgment. Okay, cool. That's cool. They are very, very different. Two cats, one black one and one white one. Awesome. I love that. And this looks like it is the Astro Matrix deck, maybe? I'm not sure. That might just be the website. I'm not sure which deck this is, actually. I don't own this deck. I just wanted to pull up a card that I thought had fantastic symbology for judgment, so I picked this one. Awesome. Okay, cool. Ooh, Christine, that's an awesome card. Nice. That's beautiful. So first, we're going to go over the definition of judgment. After I go over the definition of judgment and what this card means, I would love if all of you could tell me why you think that Scorpio, Libra, and Virgo could all represent this card. So, judgment is the inner part of you that feels as though either A, you feel extremely judged for who you are, and you feel as though you are extremely different from others, that no one quite understands you, and you feel as though you are constantly trying to rebuild and change who you are. And or so that is usually the depiction of upside down judgment. Right side up judgment is a card that focuses on you going through immense change, growth, in an effort to rebuild yourself and release the things about yourself that are no longer useful to you and that you no longer want to display. So upside down, it's a feeling of forced change, feeling like nobody understands you, nobody gets you. Everybody feels as though you're too much. Your personality is too much. You don't understand social norms, or you just, everybody feels as though they want you to change, and you don't really feel as though you can be yourself anywhere. So it's kind of this feeling of being forced to change and grow and release things about you that aren't fitting in, but you don't want to. The world is forcing you to. Whereas right side up, you want to grow and change and evolve and release things that no longer work for you, and you want to rebuild, and therefore you are coming out of the ashes as the phoenix depicts in this card, and really rebuilding yourself as a person because you have picked out the things about yourself that are no longer suiting you, and you are working to change those. Yeah. So let's talk about the astrological signs. Yes. Constantly trying to change and rebuild. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So a lot of themed decks like that. Like I have decks like, the Game of Thrones deck, the Celtic Goddess deck, the, things like that. I wouldn't use those to learn. Because yes, you are going to end up with these problems. Like the Judgment card doesn't exist because the deck is themed, and so there's going to be a card in there that represents Judgment. It's going to be card number 20, but it's not going to be called Judgment, so they're a little bit harder to learn. So card number 20 is Judgment. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Shannon. Yep. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Shannon. You are brilliant. I love it. Yes. Oh my gosh. So you actually said that the exact way that I was going to present that to the class, and how the Judgment card can represent Virgo in some ways, can represent Libra in some ways, and can represent Scorpio in some ways, and why I'm going to even put all three of those on the website. So if you read what Shannon says, that is very close to what I was going to say. So that's awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Yep. Yes. I love what you said too, Lauren. Thank you so much. That's such a wonderful depiction of how it can represent Scorpio. So, funny enough, Christy, which is something I find to be very interesting. Um, the Italians, specifically the strega, a strega is a culture. It is a culture and group of ancient pagans who created a lot of the meanings behind major arcana cards in Italy during the time. And they numbered the major arcana. But if you find, when you look up the numerology meaning of the number 20 in Greek mythology, in Italian mythology, in a lot of the mythology that would have been used in Europe at the time. It does not coincide with the astrology. So some people have their own theories to why the cards are numbered. Some people try really, really hard to match the numerology in this really big roundabout way that doesn't quite make sense. I don't do that. The numerology just doesn't make sense. Number 20 does not represent judgment in any way. Really, it seems like they put arbitrary numbers on them. The minor arcana, the numerology makes perfect sense, completely perfect sense. In the major arcana, there are lots of theories. Some people, yeah, they try to match the numerology to the card, even though you have to like jump through 17 hoops to figure out why the number 20 could possibly mean judgment, because it doesn't. Or because 20 is symbolic of the planet, and sometimes the number 20 can be a representation of Pluto, which does make sense in its relation to Scorpio. So there is relation there. Some people think it's arbitrary, that they just wanted to number the cards. Some people think that it has to do with the different gods and goddesses surrounding the meaning of the cards. But even then, there isn't really like a 20th god. And even in their numerology system, it's not necessarily going to coincide with only one god, because there are like a bajillion Celtic and Greek gods and Roman gods as well. So that doesn't really coincide. So there's a lot of theories. It's a great question. There are a lot of books. It's a fabulous question, though. Oh, that's good to know, Shannon. I love you, Jackie. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Pluto is going to be a representation of Scorpio, Christine. So that's why your book would be pointing out the Pluto symbol.
Yeah, we're checking on.
What? Okay. So, another thing that I do want to bring up, the books that come with your cards. For any of you who have been in my classes before. So the books that come with your cards, they were written by usually the artist that created the cards. 90% of the time, the artist that created the cards is not necessarily an incredible tarot reader who has been tarot reading for a gajillion years. So a lot of times the definitions that you get in the books are going to be a little iffy. Sometimes they're absolutely horrible. Sometimes they're okay. It very much depends. So yeah, I wouldn't go based off of the books necessarily, unless you specifically got your deck from an amazing tarot reader. Ooh, that's really cool, Maddie. Awesome. So basically, we got the idea of Scorpio very, very well. So Scorpio is depicted by the Judgment card in a beautiful way because of this idea, very much, or because of the idea of the upside down Judgment card, and even the right side up Judgment card, that Scorpio feels very misunderstood, that Scorpio feels the need to hide a lot of its personality traits and a lot of its characteristics and things about itself, because Scorpio tends to feel like it is very much an outcast. It feels very judged. They tend to feel like they have to put on a mask, like they have to be someone that they're not, and that they're always trying to grow and change and become something different, because they never feel as though they are accepted or like they're good enough. And even though Scorpios also tend to be the sign that we think of as being themselves and always being themselves and being somebody who is very outspoken and somebody who is very almost even conceited at times, a lot of times the inner Scorpio is doing that as a mask and as a cover up for somebody who feels very emotionally misunderstood. And also, Scorpios value these incredible ambitions. Just like the planet Pluto is about war and chaos and destruction. And also, they are about rebirth and they are about rebuilding from that destruction. And that is why I picked the card with the Phoenix as well, because even though Pluto is this planet that is dedicated to war and destruction and tearing down aspects of one's personality and of one's life, they are also about rebuilding and rebirth and regrowth. And that is a very good representation of the Judgment card, that you are always trying to change, you are always trying to rebuild, you are trying to grow and evolve as a person. And I think that's such a fantastic representation of Scorpio as well, because even though you get that upside down Scorpio where they're trying to change and regrow because they feel so misunderstood and so emotionally unheard and unseen and trapped, and like they always have to put on a mask, you also see this other side of Scorpio that really values intelligence, that's always trying to become more intellectually wise and brilliant, that is always trying to grow and change and become better and better, because they have these huge goals and aspirations and they value things so heavily, like education and wisdom and intellect. And so I think this card does a really good job of representing Scorpio. So then we have Libra and Libra's representation there. And if you look at this other one, we're about to go from Judgment being able to represent water with Scorpio, air with Libra, and earth with Virgo. So I love that too, Apollo. I always thought it was such a funny joke that people would say that maybe it wasn't a fantastic idea to tell the planet that represents the god of war that it wasn't a planet. I always thought that was funny. But yeah, exactly. I agree. It totally does represent this view of Scorpios in such a beautiful way. So when we look at the Judgment card, you can see in everything that I just described to you, you can also see this idea of Libra and this idea of constantly trying to reach homeostasis and balance, of constantly trying to become better, but then losing your inner, not being grounded anymore, losing your inner balance and having to grow and evolve and change and constantly changing and being at war with this idea of inner balance. And also that idea of inner intellect that I mentioned, which of course we have with air. And also this idea of feeling this lack of communication with the world, and Virgo being a representation of communication. Let's go here so you guys can see. Oops. And then we have Mercury, which Mercury being this huge sign of communication and reasoning and understanding and intellect and wisdom and everything that I just talked about. So Virgo is another great representation because it almost means every single thing that I already just mentioned, except for that you're being a little bit more heavy. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Anyway, Mercury. Mercury being all of these amazing things that have to do with intellect and communication. Libra having all of that intellect, that communication, that balance, that wisdom. And Venus having all of those beautiful ideas of self-love, self-care, emotions, and passion, and love communication, love languages, and being compassionate and empathetic. And even though the Judgment card doesn't represent all of those things, you can still see that because it represents evolution and growth, and because it represents somebody constantly feeling judged or constantly judging themselves and therefore wanting to become different, whether it's because you feel unseen and unheard and you feel like everybody's judging you, or because you just want to evolve and grow as a person. All of those things are going to be affected by self-love and empathy and self-care and love languages and feeling heard and feeling seen and feeling loved and feeling compassion from others. All of those things are going to change and grow and become different within the Judgment card. So, in my opinion, Scorpio represents it best. But as a couple people brought up, you can see the Mercury and Venus and Libra and Virgo in there. But I think that Scorpio represents it as a whole a lot better. Okay, so does everybody understand that? Does everybody get where I'm coming from when I say that Scorpio and Pluto represent that card the best, but that in some books that you read, I have seen Virgo and Libra in there, but I kind of explained to you why I think that Scorpio represents it best. Also, in traditional tarot created by, traditional major arcana created by the Strega culture, Scorpio is represents it. So I'm not just, I'm not just pulling Scorpio out of nowhere. Scorpio is what represents it traditionally by the Strega people. That is what represents it. That is traditional. But some tarot books and websites and stuff are going to go on this Virgo Libra train, and I kind of explained to you why. But do you see why Scorpio, in my opinion, represents it best, as well as Pluto? I completely agree, Lauren. Yep. The duality represented by Libra, definitely. Yes. Yes, I totally agree. I think that's super interesting too. And you can really see the duality that Libra represents and how that affects Scorpio. And how those choices are going to affect Scorpio. But if we're really talking about the entire card in itself, I think that Scorpio is a great representation. And then that the Judgment card is heavily affected by Venus and Libra and Virgo in a huge way. But that at its core, it is represented by Scorpio. But I completely agree with you. And I think that is super interesting. It does. It does make you feel like the Two of Swords.
Yeah. I feel like this card, I feel like this card is like a birth chart, and the sun sign is Scorpio, and like the moon sign is Libra, and the ascending is Virgo. Like Like, this is the definition of a birth chart right now.
I totally agree. I can totally see that. That's great. Yes. So the next card. The next card that, yes. The next card that we are going to go over is the Sun. So tell me what you think the Sun Tarot card is represented by. Yep. Yes, that one's super easy. It is represented by Leo. Yes. And also represented by the Sun. Yes. Oh, yes. It's also one of the easiest tarot cards to read as well, because, at least for me, it is very self-explanatory. If you know what the sun kind of represents in paganism, when we talk about Celtic paganism, and what the sun means in European astrology and all of those things, it's exactly that. Yes, exactly, exactly. Challenge accepted, and I'm gonna get it. Oh, so Leo. It's so beautiful. I love the difference in the fire signs. I know that we see that with obviously every single sign. No, you know, 2 earth signs are not going to be the same. And same with 2 water signs. Like, you know, the difference between Scorpio and Pisces is insane. But I love how the fire signs differ from each other. And even though I'm a fire sign, Sagittariuses are not Leos. And it's always very interesting, even though they're both represented by fire. But yes, so the Sun is Leo. The Sun tarot card is extremely, it's a huge it represents Leo perfectly. It is strength. It is that extreme positivity that no matter how big the goal or challenge is, like, of course you're going to accomplish it, like, duh. And obviously, because you're a Leo. And it is that big, bright, shiny light at the end of the tunnel. It is drive, exactly. It is passion. It is determination, and all that is motivation. It is the card that when you get in your reading, whatever you ask, you definitely have the ability to make absolutely anything that you want happen. There is a big, beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. There is warmth and courage and strength in your future, that you are probably someone who is very courageous, very strong, very passionate and motivated. And it depends, obviously, on the question that you asked. You know, if you asked about a person in your life, then this card could be representing that person, not you. But anyway, the Sun represents joy and, yeah, and determination and strength and courage and passion and motivation and all of those things. Right side up Sun is usually just all of those things laid out for you, that, you know, there is a beautiful bright light at the end of the tunnel, that you are somebody who is motivated and determined and strong and courageous, and you are going to get through this. and you are going to accomplish your goals and your dreams and your aspirations. Upside down, you might be putting a little bit too much on your plate. Upside down, we have the crazy Leo. We have the Leo that is a little bit more in relation to the Fool. You have taken on 500,000 billion things. You're trying to be the courage for everyone. You're trying to be the light in everyone's life. You're trying to be everything all at once, and you can't. It's not going to work. So hush, Jackie. And and of course, what comes with the upside down sun, and how it also relates to the sun and to Leo, is obviously if the sun shines too bright. If you were to have only sun and no rain, everything would die. If you were to have, you cannot be 100% motivated, excited, happy, determined, all of those things, all of the time, 24 hours a day, every day. You cannot be the courage for everybody. You cannot be the sun 24 hours a day. And upside down sun is burnout. It is, you have tried to be this extreme sun for so long that it's time for rest. It is time for rain. It is time for snow. It is time for clouds, and that you are burnt out. You need to take a rest. You need to stop. That the world will not crumble and fall apart if you go to sleep. I promise it'll be okay. And that is yeah, exactly, like Icarus. Yeah. You cannot fly too close to the sun. But yeah, exactly. So yeah, the sun is pretty easy to read. Just remember that upside down sun, and kind of how to let somebody know that it is time for rest, that the sun cannot, and that same goes for Leo. Sometimes Leos can over Leo. They can too much Leo. And same thing with every sign, but sometimes Leos especially, they try to be the courage and light for the entire world and for everybody all at once. They try to do 5,000 things. They try to be every single person's person and rock. They try to give everybody everything all the time. They try to just be this beautiful light for every single person who's ever known them. And that is amazing and wonderful about the Leo. But then the Leo burns out, and then that's really sad for the Leo. So, does anybody have any questions about the sun? Okay, cool. So moving on to the moon, which is already listed there. So the moon, obviously, once again, to me, this one's pretty obvious, but the sun's astrological association is Pisces. And with Pisces, we get Neptune. So can anybody tell me a little bit about Pisces? Yes, Carrie, totally. I totally understand, Shannon. I hope you have a fantastic night. I'm in Western Mountain Time, so for me, it's only 8 o'clock or like 8:40. So I totally understand. I hope you have a fabulous night. Good night. I hope to see you in other classes. So yes, we have intuition, the duality inside of us. of tame and wild dreams, the unconscious, fear, illusion. Yes, totally. I love it. The moon? I mean, oh, I see why you think that. I was like, why? It's totally Pisces. I swear I've always said Pisces. Okay, yes. It is Cancer in a sense. Okay, and I see where you're getting that because of my lovely cheat sheet chart. So, the Moon Tarot card. The Moon Tarot card can be represented by Cancer, for sure. And I know that we have talked about that in other classes. That's why I know that this can definitely be very complex and hard, because I have definitely referenced the moon and Cancer millions of times, all the time. The moon is Cancer. The moon is represented by Cancer, and the Moon Tarot card definitely has a lot of Cancer in it. And in many classes, I have referenced the moon and Cancer. The Moon Tarot card itself is very represented by Pisces. The moon astrological symbol is represented by Cancer. So some decks of tarot cards are definitely going to have a little Cancer sign on the moon card, for sure. And whenever I talk about astrology and I talk about the moon, we're of course going to talk about Cancer, because the moon rules over Cancer. So the Moon Tarot card is going to have a lot of aspects of Cancer in it. And saying that the Moon Tarot card represents Cancer would not necessarily make you wrong. But the Moon Tarot card, when we talk about the definition of what it means in a tarot spread, it is going to mean Pisces, not Cancer. Does that make sense? So astrologically, the moon is ruled by Cancer, or Cancer is ruled by the moon. But the definition of the tarot card, the moon, means symbolically the definition of Pisces. So, yeah, I know that one's confusing. Totally understand why that's confusing. Yes. Yep. Hurt easily, expect love and romance all the time, which no one can keep up with. Totally. Yes, that's very stereotypically Pisces, for sure. Yep. That is how they run their life, by how they feel. Yes. 1 foot here and 1 foot in the other realm. They're intuitive. They can be wishy-washy and petty, for sure. Yeah. So Pisces are extremely emotional. Yes. But because Pisces are so emotional, that also means that they understand emotion. And when I tell you the meaning of this card, it is, I want you to tell me why you think it's represented by Pisces. All water signs are. All water signs are very emotional. You are right. The emotional side of Cancer is a little bit different than Pisces, but Cancer and Pisces are going to be much more similar than Scorpio. That's kind of, when you say all water signs are emotional, yes, but Scorpio is very different from Cancer, even though they are both very emotional. But never tell a Scorpio that. So the moon. The moon represents our phases in life. So the moon is going to, number one, of course, the moon represents our intuition, our empathy, our love. and our compassion and our ability to connect with other people's emotions, such as, empathy and intuition and all of that. But a big thing for the moon and what it means a lot of the time in tarot readings specifically is somebody who is going through a transitional period in their life when it comes to the phases of life. Usually this card gets pulled when somebody is going from being a child to an adult, or going from being an adult to somebody who is much older. I don't know. A great symbol for this is the mother, the maiden, and the crone. Are the maiden, mother, and crone. Sorry. So you start off as a child, and then you become somebody who is able to not only take care of yourself, but able to take care of others. The mother, just to throw this out there, has absolutely nothing to do with having children. It is, you now have the capability and ability to take care of yourself and to take care of others. And that can be taking care of your friends and taking care of your parents, taking care of your dogs and your cats and all of those things. You have the ability to take care of others. And then the crone, who is an elderly person and wise, and who is closer to the stage in life of death. So the moon represents these phases. Usually in a tarot spread, when somebody gets them, it is going to represent that they are in a transitionary period. They are transitioning from adult into crone. And usually when you are in a transitionary period in your life, you are going through a lot of emotions, and you are going through something that all humans and all things on planet Earth have in common is that we go through a cycle and we die. Now, there are some species of things on Earth that go through different cycles. There are like lobsters who are technically immortal. But did you know that? Like, the lobster is technically immortal, but it's just that its shell rots. And because its shell rots, it dies. But if it had the capability of a hermit crab and it could like change into a different shell, it could live forever because it doesn't actually go through the stage of death. It doesn't oxidize and decompose and die like we do. It's crazy. Anyway, but all things on planet Earth live and go through a cycle and they die. So when we talk about that, that is one of the biggest forms of emotional empathy. A lot of people don't always experience empathy in the same way that others do. Empathy is that ability to put yourself into someone else's shoes, to understand how they're feeling on a personal level. It's not sympathy. It's not, oh, I feel bad for you. It is, I know exactly where you've been. I know exactly what that feels like. And one of the ways in which all humans can experience empathy, unless you have like a clinical disorder that stops you from being able to experience empathy. But one way that we can all experience empathy is the phases of life. We all know what it's like to transition, to age, to go through the aging process. Even if you died young, you still know what it's like to age. You know what it's like to be a baby, and then unless you didn't make it past the baby phase, which is very sad. And yeah, but most humans, most humans know what it's like to go from the baby phase into the toddler phase, into the child phase, and then into the teenager phase, and so on and so forth. We can all empathize with each other. We know what it's like to age. And that is something that the moon represents, is that idea of empathy when it comes to the transitions through phases that we make in life. And going from the maiden to the mother to the crone, going through this process of aging. We can all empathize. We all know what that's like. And so when you're mixing that idea of Pisces with intuition and love and emotion and empathy and compassion and love, and you're mixing it with the symbology of the moon, which is phases of life, and even the moon ruling over Cancer, and Cancer being that representation once again of being able to understand the bigger picture of emotions. Whereas Pisces tend to be extremely good at empathy, whereas Cancers obviously are still great with empathy, but Cancers tend to be able to see the big picture. A Cancer is that person that's going to be like, well, have you tried seeing it through that other person's eyes? And then the Pisces is probably going to be the person that gets mad and is like, no, but my feelings and what I'm going through. Even though the Pisces has the same ability to be empathetic, just like the Cancers are better at seeing the overall big picture. But anyway, so the moon is the representation of the empathy, the intuition, the emotions, the love, the compassion that stem from our ability to empathize with the stages of life that we're going through. And upside down, the moon is telling you that you are struggling with the transitions through the phases of life. Right side up, the moon is telling you that you are ready to transition to this new phase of life, and that you are coming at it with peace and harmony, and that you have accepted the transition into this new phase of life. And it also represents all of that empathy and intuition and love and compassion and everything that comes with going and transitioning through the phases of life. Okay. I'm glad you guys like my lobster story. I'm reading all the chat now. So, okay, yeah. I answered that question. Awesome. Okay, so does everybody understand the moon? And the big, long, gigantic speech about the moon that included immortal lobsters that I just made. Does anybody have any questions about the moon and what it represents and why it represents Pisces? Does everybody understand why it represents Pisces? Oh, and Neptune. I guess I didn't really go into Neptune, which I probably should. So Neptune is also, it's that representation of Neptune is extremely rebellious, and Neptune is a representation of rebellion and being who you really are and kind of fighting against the system and not wanting to exist in the real world and kind of wanting to exist in your own little planet inside your mind, being somebody who is kind of lives in a different world sometimes, is always daydreaming and is always against the status quo, always wants to start a revolution, and is always fighting to grow and change and evolve, not only as a person, but that Neptune wants the entire world to grow and change and evolve with them. They're very close to that idea of Uranus as well. But Neptune has a lot more empathy and intuition and magic that's associated with it. And so, which of course comes with this idea of transitioning through the phases of life. You know, at first being a child and wanting to grow and change and learn, and you know, then of course as you get a little bit older, you're rebelling in a sense that I can do it myself, I can do it myself, I don't need anybody, I can do it myself. And you know, I don't know if anybody who's ever spent a long time around like 2-year-olds, you have to let them zip their jacket for 45 minutes while you wait because they can do it themselves. It's very Neptune. um and Yeah. So it is, Neptune is also representative of those stages of life and how they equate to kind of a revolution and a sense of rebellion and a sense of love and compassion and inspiration going on inside your own mind and inside your own body as you transition through the phases of life. Um, Okay, Danielle, I'm going to try and answer your question. I'm not sure if I fully understand, but that's totally cool. Please keep asking if I don't answer it. So it's basically something that you have to memorize through research. One of the reasons I started this academy was because it's actually really difficult to find this information online. And I have already done the 25 years of research, and my entire family has too. So I wanted to give it to you for free. But you read 10 million books. That's how you figure it out. But or I have a little chart right here. This chart you can find anywhere online. This is very, very simple. So if you have this little chart here, you can Google this. It's everywhere. And see how Pisces on here is listed
So,
underwater.
so let's say that, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I totally can. Hi.
Hi, hello. Thank you for your time, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course.
So let's say that I have the moon. How do I know where to go from here? For example, I don't have the booklet with me. So once I figure out it's Pisces, then obviously it's easy because I know it's underwater and then I know it's related to Neptune. But to get that initial Pisces, that's where I'm not sure how to make that connection from the
So
moon to Pisces.
how to figure out that the moon card represents Pisces?
Yes.
Yes. So that
Gotcha.
you come to this
Research.
class.
Got it.
Yes.
I will take your astrology class. Thank you so much.
Of course. No.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Of course, you're awesome. Thank you. Of course, there are books, and if you go to this website that I have here, that I have linked to all of you in the chat, it's just divinationacademy.com. There is also a very handy, I'm going to show it to you right now. Let me make this bigger for everybody. So if you go to the study guide section, we are working on making this better because right now it's kind of a little jumbled. But if you go to the bibliography section, we have a million different books that you can look up and read. We've got the author, the date of publication, the name of the book, and there are hundreds. There are hundreds of different books that all of us have read, and that I have read, and then specific professors will put ones that they have read. I will vet it to make sure that it's a book I want on my website. But yeah, so that's another way that you can find this information, is if you scroll through here and you look for, we are trying to organize it by type. So soon you'll see tarot. Right now you just kind of have to go through, but here's the one that I would suggest for this class. So right here, you will see Renescesso. I would suggest, is it even on here? Okay, there's a book by Rena Shesso that's called Planets for Pagans. That has all of this information in it. Everything that I'm telling you right now, Rena Shesso has in her book. And I'll put that in the chat right now. It should be listed somewhere in our bibliography section, but we're working on organizing this. Right now, it's just a list of a bajillion books. Anyway, so Planets for Pagans by Rena Shesso. Also, something I love about Rena, she's fantastic. Like I said, she's a professor here. She's been teaching me how to read tarot cards since I was 3 years old. But her books are extremely cheap. She's not trying to make money off of you. She genuinely just wants to put this information out there. Not that it's bad to try and make money as an author. If you are making money as an author, that's fantastic. She just happens to have a different job, and this is not her way of making income. And so her books are like, they're like $7. So I suggest Planets for Pagans by Rena Shesso. It has all this information in it that I'm teaching you now. So, this little chart's also just like on the website too. For those of you who need it, same with the other chart. On the website, just there for you. So the next card, we're gonna go over one more. I'm already out of time. I swear, this is why I have to teach like 19 major arcana courses, because I go on tangents about lobsters and we end up only going over like 5 cards. But it's okay. So the next card that we have is the star. So first of all, I want you guys to tell me why you think the stars would be represented by Aquarius. And if you're not sure what the stars represent, that's totally fine. But what is Aquarius? Oh, I guess I don't need to. I can just do that. Okay. Yes. What is Aquarius? What does Aquarius stand for? Who are Aquariuses? And I already gave you a little bit of a hint too, because like I said, Neptune and Uranus are very similar when it comes to their symbolic meaning for their planets. And we talked about the symbolic meaning of Neptune, that rebellion. And I think this is also an aspect of Aquarius that a lot of people forget. Also, people tend to think that Aquariuses are water. They are not water, they are air. Yes, Chelsea, I love that description. Yes. Yep. That is such a beautiful description, Chelsea. I love that. They want to shake up this world and make it better. Yes, exactly. So we're going to take a look. At oh, wow, Alex. I was like, why do these suck? There we go. You can even tell. You can tell if you know the symbol for Aquarius. Oh, bye, Ethan. Did you have to go? I hope you enjoyed class. Anyway. You guys can tell in just the depiction of these cards. Like, look at these cards. If you know what the Aquarius symbol is, you can tell immediately that the stars is Aquarius. Like, it's obvious. She's the water bearer. Look at that. Look how pretty. But yeah, it just looks like Aquarius. If you've ever seen Aquarius, like the symbol for Aquarius, I look, you should look it up. And you can tell that the stars card is literally based off of Aquarius. Like, look, that's Aquarius right there. That is Aquarius. Actually, we're going to look at this card. This is the card we're going to look at. Okay. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay. And that is why everybody thinks it's water and not air. So true. It's so true. Yep. So Aquarius might as well be, she is an air sign, but she might as well be a water air sign, which is why everybody thinks she's water. She's the water bearer. The only reason I say that, at least why I said that just now, was just because, like, here, let me show you if you don't know, or for anybody in this class who doesn't know. Nope. Aquarius. So she's the water bearer. This is Aquarius. This is the symbol for Aquarius. It is the water bearer. Yeah, here we go. This. Let me move all this stuff over here. So that one kind of makes it look like her hair, but it's supposed to be water. That's that is Aquarius. She is the water bearer. She's normally depicted by this little jug of water here. That's what I meant by water bearer. And let's go back to our star card. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, and she has the root word. Yep, she has the root word aqua. And a lot of Aquariuses tend to be very emotional. My mother is an Aquarius. And yeah, yes, they are very emotional beings. So we have Aquarius and Uranus. So Uranus is, yes, the planet of revolution, the planet of not only like rebellion and revolution, kind of like Neptune, but Uranus has the power and the ability to speak and communicate so well that it can get an entire country to start a revolution instantly. They can get every single person motivated and off their feet and excited and wanting to take down the government. Just like that. And they do it frequently. And they can, yeah, totally very Cleopatra vibes, for sure. They can incite so much inspiration into a group of thousands of people just by creating a speech, just by talking. They are probably somebody who fights for human justice and human rights, and they are somebody who is extremely intelligent and they value intelligence. They are somebody who is very wise and intellectual, and that is what makes them air. I know that in this class, we didn't go over the meaning of each element. We do that in like 9 of our previous other classes, so I didn't want to waste too much time doing that. But air is the symbol of communication and knowledge and analytics and wisdom, and it is decision making and being able to have extremely intellectual thought, intellectual conversations, Socratic conversations, and being able to communicate exactly what you mean to a huge group of people, being able to help others learn something that you just learned and sounding like you are the master of it, that you know everything about it. That is air, and Aquarius represents that so well, and so do all the other air signs, just in general. Yes, they can also use those powers for evil, for sure. So that's kind of where we were going with that as well. So Aquariuses, though they are everything that I just said, which is absolutely amazing, they are brilliant people who are so much fun to be around because they're always trying to start a revolution, which is so much fun. But that also means that they are extremely good at manipulating you. They are very, very good at lying. They can lie perfect, absolutely perfect. You would never know. Even people with incredible empathy and intuition don't know. The Aquarius is the master liar because, unlike the other air signs tend to also be fantastic liars, great manipulators, and absolutely stunningly brilliant and amazing, and just the most wise and brilliant people you've ever met. But the Aquarius also has that water. They also have this weird ability to understand every single person's emotions and to be able to read them really well. So when an Aquarius lies, they know how to lie in a specific way that is going to get a specific person to believe them. It's another way they start revolutions. It's another way that they get 5,000, 200,000, 1 million people to all see things the exact same way that they do. They can be quite scary. They are fantastic at guilting you. They are fantastic at kind of gaslighting you and mind fucking you. That is, yeah. But all the signs, we're human. All of us have extremely incredible, beautiful, amazing qualities. And all of us have really not so awesome, super amazing, wonderful qualities because we are human. So, yes, they can be quite dangerous. Yeah, exactly, Jackie. I love the way that you said that. Totally. Yes, Gemini have this power too. Oh yes. So now, how does that relate to the stars? Or the star in tarot cards? So I picked out this image for a specific reason. The Star Tarot card represents hopes and dreams and wishes and ambition and drive. This card represents, its keywords are your wishes coming true. Now, the back end of this card, the things that a lot of tarot readers don't say when they are giving you this reading. A lot of people love the Star card. Oh, your wishes are going to come true. This is an Aquarius card. For wishes to come true, something that I will have you notice, there's a reason I picked out this card exactly. You have the shooting star in the background, which is it represents your wishes coming true. The big giant North Star in the background, which also means your wishes coming true. It's an old ancient symbol for being able to pinpoint exactly what you want and find your way through the darkness. Being able to find your way there and help to make all of your wishes come true, to help make your ambitions come true. And you have the water, and taking the water and all of your emotions and pouring them into the ocean, which is a beautiful ancient symbol of your emotions flourishing and happiness flourishing, and your emotions becoming as strong as the ocean. But you also have the skull. Exactly. People found it. They did. Good job, Jackie. And exactly. Good job. Oh, see, you guys are ahead of me. Good job. You have the crow. And you also have how dangerous the ocean can be. And if anybody knows anything about the actual mythology of mermaids, that is also not always they're not always kind. And the depiction of the crow, a depiction of a crow is a symbol for not just death, but it can also be cunningness and mischievousness and trickery and things being not what they seem. And also being, it can be death, as like I mentioned, death and murder and things like that, but also just like being tricksters, gentle tricksters, and things being not always what they seem. And yeah, and then you have the skull, which is very deathy. Of course, and then we have sirens too. Not all mermaids are sirens. Sirens are a specific type of fae. They are a specific type of mermaid, but yes, exactly. And she looks very much like a siren. I can totally, yeah, exactly. So when you have the skull and you have the crow and you have the scary mermaid and you have the scary ocean, you have this idea that yes, your wishes are going to come true. And when this card comes up in your reading and it comes up right side up, yes, your wishes are going to come true. And everything that you have been working towards is going to come true. And your, all the things that you have worked very hard to accomplish are going to come to fruition. You are going to reap all of the benefits of everything that you spent so long doing. But be careful. Be careful what you wish for. What does your wish mean for real? Take a good look at what you want. And it doesn't have to be this big, like, monkey's paw, it's gonna backfire and your mom's gonna die. Like, no. No. For example, something that happened to me in my real life. And, you know, I always love sharing stories about me personally and my tarot readings. I got the star and I didn't even think about it. And I'm a tarot reader. I've been a tarot reader for 25 years. I know this card. I know that it has undertones of be careful what you wish for. But I got it and I was like, sweet, awesome. The things that I've been working towards are going to come true. And I asked about this academy. And I was like, I've been working really, really hard to build this academy from the ground up, and it's free. And people think I'm absolutely insane because I am working 40 hours a week for free. And I must be crazy, but I really, really want this to work. And I want to create a free academy for everybody to learn at. And I'm really excited. Is it going to work? And I got the star and I was like, yay, totally going to work. But do I get, 300, 400 messages a day? Yes. Am I just one person? Yes. Am I suddenly like all over social media and every single person makes 500 different comments on every single thing that I post? Yes. Am I suddenly in YouTube comments like crying because people are mean? Yes. And Instagram and my email, and yeah, be careful what you wish for. That doesn't mean it didn't go well. I am still super, super stoked that we have this big, beautiful academy that has thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, and I love it. And I'm so excited. But be careful what you wish for, because yeah, it also makes me cry. So there are things that, you have to know what you're wishing for, know what you're getting into, and know what's going to happen. And the star upside down and right side up mean very similar things. The star upside down means that a lot of your wishes, or the wish that you asked about, is probably not going to come true, but that's probably a good thing. Whereas right side up, it means it is going to come true, but be careful, because it, know what you're wishing for. Know what you're getting yourself into. And that is so Aquarius, because like I said, Aquariuses have the power to take over the world. They have the power to change the world, the power to start huge revolutions, the power to change everything. But that also means the power to start a war. That also means the power to manipulate and lie and cheat and steal and kill and all of these things. So yeah, I think that's a fun one to end on too. And thank you guys so much. But yes, definitely, I want to say that too. Thank you for bringing that up, Jackie. In this class, we are definitely going card by card. We are looking at the card in and of itself and what it means on its own. But of course, the meanings of the cards are going to change depending on the cards surrounding it. And so we are going to get into that when we start learning about how to do tarot spreads. And there already is a video up on our YouTube explaining how to do the Celtic cross spread. So take a look at that one if you're interested in learning about how the cards can slightly change when they're next to each other. Of course. I'm so happy that you guys enjoyed it. I love teaching this class. Thank you so much for being here. I know we only made it through, I don't know. I think we made it through 6 cards. I'll have to look, but still, it was so much fun. Does anybody have any questions before we end class for tonight?